You know, every time you step onto a bus, book a flight, or even just hop on a ferry, you're placing your trust in an unspoken promise. It's a guarantee of safety, one that's backed by a really powerful part of the law. Today, we're going to unpack that promise, the law of common carriers. So let me just ask you this right at the start. When you're standing there, ticket in hand, about to get on board, what are you actually guaranteed? I mean, legally speaking. Are you just kind of hoping for the best, or is there a specific level of safety that they have to provide? Well, the answer is pretty fascinating. Okay, so first things first, we've got to figure out who we're even talking about. What makes someone a common carrier? You might be thinking of the big guys, airlines and bus companies. But trust me, this definition stretches way further than you'd expect. Here's the official definition from the Civil Code. Now, it seems straightforward. It boils down to a few key things. It's a business, they get paid for it, and, this is the big one, they offer their services to the public. But the way the courts have defined business and public is where things get really interesting. Let's put this to the test. Picture this. There's a junk dealer. His main gig is dealing junk, obviously. But to make a little extra cash on his empty return trips, he sometimes hauls cargo for other people for a fee. So, what do you think? Is he a common carrier? The answer from the Supreme Court was a clear yes. And this is huge, because it tells us something crucial. It doesn't matter if hauling stuff is just your side hustle. It doesn't matter if you only do it once in a while. If you offer to carry people or goods for money, you're playing by these rules. All right, how about this scenario? You've got a school bus service. It has a contract with just one school, and it only transports students from that school. It's not open to just anyone on the street. That has to be a private service, right? Nope. The court said this is a common carrier, too. It turns out the word public doesn't mean you have to serve every single person on Earth. If you offer your service to a specific group, in this case, all the students of a particular school, that's public enough. You're in. Okay, last one I promise. Imagine a fancy resort on a private island. To get you there, they include a free boat ride in their tour package. Since you're not buying a separate boat ticket, can they wriggle out of being a common carrier? Yeah, nice try. The law sees right through that. The court's logic was simple. Of course they're a common carrier. That boat ride isn't really free. The cost is just baked into the total price of the package. And the service is offered to the public, that is, any member of the public with enough cash for the tour. So, now we know just how wide the net is for who counts as a common carrier. But why does this label matter so much? What's the big deal? Well, it all comes down to a standard of care that's so high, it's almost like a legal superpower designed to keep us safe. This is it. This is the heart of the whole thing. The law demands extraordinary diligence. Now, that's not just a fancy way of saying be careful. This is the highest possible standard of care that exists in the law. It basically means the carrier has to do everything humanly possible to prevent harm. And to really understand how high that bar is, just look at the difference. A private carrier, let's say your buddy helping you move your couch, only has to be reasonably careful. That's ordinary diligence. But a common carrier, they're held to the standard of a brain surgeon. And this isn't random, it's public policy. The law recognizes that we are literally putting our lives in their hands.
So what happens when something goes wrong? This is where that legal superpower really flexes its muscles. It introduces a concept that completely flips our normal idea of justice on its head.
That's not a typo. If a passenger gets hurt, or worse, the law doesn't wait around for proof. It immediately presumes the carrier was at fault. The burden of proof is completely reversed. The victim doesn't have to prove the carrier was negligent. The carrier has to prove they were perfect. So, here's how it plays out. Step 1. An accident happens. Step 2. Boom. The carrier is legally assumed to be the one to blame. And step 3, they are now facing the massive uphill battle of proving they did everything, and I mean everything humanly possible to stop that accident from happening. Let me tell you about a tragic case that makes this crystal clear. A passenger on a crowded jeepney was forced to sit on an empty beer case. The jeepney's engine died while going up a hill, and as it rolled backward, her foot was crushed. The court's ruling was swift. Forcing someone onto a makeshift seat and having your engine fail, that is the exact opposite of extraordinary diligence. The carrier stood no chance of overcoming that presumption of guilt. Okay, so this extraordinary standard is a huge deal. But how long does it last? When does this protective bubble around you actually start, and when does it finally pop? Well, the law is pretty generous.
This protection covers the whole shebang. It starts the second you set foot on the carrier's property intending to travel, like when you walk into the train station. It obviously covers the entire trip, and it doesn't end the instant you step off. The carrier is still on the hook until you've had a reasonable amount of time to leave their premises safely, and that includes grabbing your bags.
Let's bring this into the world we all live in now. What about those ride-sharing apps on your phone? You tap a screen, a car shows up. How does this law, which is over a century old, handle that? Okay, here's where the law draws a very specific line. The app company itself, the one that made the software, they argue they're just a tech platform, a matchmaker connecting a rider and a driver, and generally the law agrees they are not the common carrier. But the driver, the person who actually picks you up, oh yeah, they are absolutely 100% considered a common carrier, and they owe you that same duty of extraordinary diligence.
And all of this leaves us with a huge question for the future. I mean, this law was written in the age of steamships and railways, but as we start looking at self-driving cars, drone deliveries, maybe even space tourism, how does this fundamental promise of safety need to change to keep protecting us on journeys we can't even imagine yet?